Hello once again, everyone. Original Blood Ice back again, and it's finally time for my Bayonetta 2 review. Uh, it only took us, what, a year to get around to it? But whatever, we're finally getting around to it. So, it's been forever since I played the game and beat the game, obviously. So I might be missing out on a few key points, and if I am, then feel free, you can say in a comment or whatever, but for the most part, I'm going off memory here. So, bear with me. Let's start with the pros first, as we usually do. The game length. From what I remember, the game had a great balance in game length. While it felt like a long game, it actually wasn't way over the top for it being like a game where you're saying, my god, how much longer until we're done. So, kudos on that to Platinum Games. But speaking of over the top, the whole game itself, both in story and animations and everything, was in typical Platinum Games style, as well as Hideki Kamiya style, which, obviously is not a shocker. Now, the story, I don't remember all of it, but I recall the main points of the story, the main parts, and it had one of those stories where, if you hadn't played these types of games before, these over-the-top games, then you were just like, what? That makes no fucking sense. But fuck it, it's Bayonetta, damn it, so it's okay. But definitely an enjoyable story. The combat, of course, we can't be missing the combat, we gotta talk about that. You can't talk about a Platinum Games game and not talk about the combat. Now, unlike Wonderful 101, which you all know I did not enjoy the gameplay of that, Bayonetta 2 had a perfect, fast-paced combat system. So that's definitely a huge plus. Let's kind of just carry that point on to the next one, which is gameplay. Smooth as silk is all that I really need to say. But also, I'll just quickly add into here, the execution attacks, I believe they're called or whatever, were amazing, and simply sometimes just straight up funny. I recall there was one that you could do to like the centaur guys, where he'd be like on a treadmill or something, and for some reason you'd be like spanking his ass, and it's like, what the fuck am I even doing with my life? But either way, good times, good times. So let's talk the controls and the combos, which I feel kind of go together. Like usual, it takes a while to get the hang of the controls on a new game. That's nothing shocking or surprising or revolutionary there. But after a few missions of the game, I got the hang of it, and mostly I should say. And also, I just want to throw in there Witch Time was cool. And as for combos, I was alright at it. Never amazing like, those super MLG people, but I was good enough. Now, here's a fact that I always love talking about with reviews, because it's always a key thing that not a lot of people seem to, put up in their reviews and everything, which is soundtrack. That's always been one important thing for me. Not resolution or fucking, graphics and all that shit, but about the frickin' soundtrack. So, while it's no Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, Bayonetta 2 has a solid and enjoyable soundtrack nonetheless. The humor, we gotta talk about that. This kind of falls into the game's story, I suppose, but some characters like the old guy, it is odd guy. Yeah, not old. What am I talking about? The odd guy who comes swinging in all the time. He's a young guy, trying to hit on Bayonetta or whatever. I can't remember his name. He keeps failing over and over again, but you know who I'm talking about. Also, the kid who kept saying, "I'm not a kid, love," or whatever he was saying. Again, his name slips my mind, but whatever. He always said funny things in his conversations with Bayonetta, and we'll throw in the other guy, the fat mafia-looking guy. Again, his name escapes me. Apologies, it's been over a fucking year. I only really remember Bayonetta 2, or Bayonetta, I should say, and Jean. But, yeah. So the next pro, simple enough. Game was straight up fun. Simple as that. Now, M rating. That's what we're going to talk about. Now, why is this on my list of pros? Because it could also be on some people's cons, like if you're a person who gets offended by oh, they're over-sexualizing women and, all that stuff. Well, frankly, if you have a problem with that kind of thing, why would you buy the fucking game to begin with? But either way, for me, it's in the pros category because it's a nice change of pace to have a rated M game on a Nintendo console that's actually also great as a game. So there wasn't much swearing, and if I recall, in the game, but there's definitely some, which I have no problem with. Um, what else here? The Nintendo shoutouts type thing. If you know what I'm talking, or if you don't know what I'm talking about the Link costume, the Samus and Peach costume, and of course my favorite, the Star Fox costume that Bayonetta could wear. Speaking of Star Fox, the Star Fox level. I forgot to write that in my notes, the little Easter egg. Throw that in there for special nomination as a pro. Those were all great. The collectibles. I can't really remember what the collectibles themselves were, other than there was some items, you know, for like buffing your character. So it was okay from what I remember, but I didn't go out of my way to try and hunt down every single one. I think there was like it was like half broken records that you unlock stuff with or whatever. You had to find the other half and stuff like that. It's been a fucking long time. I don't remember. But either way, there wasn't a whole lot in terms of variety for collectibles, but it was fine for what it was. The game is supposed to be fast-paced, hectic, and chaotic, where you're just bouncing off the walls, going all over the place. And one thing I forgot to mention, actually, back with the controls, was the turning into the Panther. Forgot about mentioning that. That was kind of fun and a nice change, as well as the snake when you're underwater. Now let's talk about multiplayer mode. Which, again, sorry for my memory failing me, but I can't remember what the fucking multiplayer mode was called. Umbran Climax was at it, or just Climax? I don't know. I think Umbran Climax was the special attack you could do when you charged it up in single player. Either way, it was an okay multiplayer mode, better than not being there at all, but I didn't really play it much. Wasn't really my cup of tea, I guess. And the last pro that I have here on my list, I couldn't leave it out, which is the sexiness of Bayonetta herself. Not sure if that's the correct way to phrase it, but point is, whether it was seeing her tits or her ass, even though you never really saw certain parts, was always something that put a smile on my face, and that's always something that gives it a game, any game, you know, high props. So, anyway, let's move on to the cons finally. That was a huge list of pros. Now, there's not a lot of cons, really. It's a bit harder to come up with a list of cons. First of all, a typical complaint of mine with Platinum's games is having boss fights that take way, way, way too long. Again, none were as bad as some of the ones in the Wonderful 101, but there was some. Well, actually, one thing I forgot to mention before was, I guess it's part of the story, I really liked how the angels... I guess it was probably like this in the first one, but again, haven't played it. The angels were the bad guys, and the demons were somewhat the good guys. So I thought that was quite interesting. But anyway, back to the cons here. There was one boss, which, again, I don't recall the boss's name, but she was a boss when Bayonetta went into hell and went to go get Jean. And she was like a plant lady or something along those lines. I just remember that boss was pissing me off to no end in my playthrough on OBA games. Yep, cheap plug, I know. But anyway, I'm pretty sure that boss sticks to my memory because that was just the hardest boss, or at least one of the top 3 bosses of the game that was really challenging for me. And then the last con here, the challenge rooms, or whatever they're called. Was it Chalice Room? I can't fucking remember now. Whatever they were called, whatever. They were so annoyingly, frustratingly tough. Not at the beginning, they started off easy. That I eventually just realized, I was like, you know what? I don't need to waste time doing this. I'm just going to skip them, and I couldn't be bothered to go do them. So, whatever. I got through the game without having to do it. Not a big issue. And that's it for the cons, really. So, just, you know, a few bosses take too long to beat, the one boss that was a fucking asshole, and the challenge rooms. That's just it, really. So overall, the score that I will give Bayonetta 2 is going to be an 8.5 out of 10, which is a solid score, and respectable score, I would say. Now, even though the game came with Bayonetta 1, I still have yet to play it. And I assume at some point I'll get around to playing the first one on OBA games. Probably not till next year after I've finished games like Star Fox Zero, Yoshi's Woolly World, Mario Maker, Xenoblade Chronicles X, Fatal Frame 5, Fast Racing Neo, and Devil's Third. I know that's a lot there, so... Basically, when there's a Wii U game drought in 2016, which I'm hoping there's at least like a 1 to 2 month drought there, where I don't need to worry about anything, and I can just play that, that's the plan. What was I going to say here? I can't remember now. I was talking about playing the game in 2016, blah, 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 blah. Oh yeah, I was going to say, and most likely, I'll do a review on Bayonetta 1, but not till a year after that. So, expect a review of Bayonetta 1 in 2017. uh, anyway, finally, I can say I got my review of Bayonetta 2 done. And again, sorry it took so fucking long to get around to it, but hey, better late than never, they say. Anyway, I'm Original Blood Ace, as usual. Stay tuned for more videos coming soon, as always.